telling you one of the stories behind the stars. This one is an individual by the name of Owen Sutton. He served in the 2nd Mechanized Cavalry Group. And something interesting about Owen, related to all the other stories that I've researched. This project began back with the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And each day I've identified one person born on that date 100 years ago from when I wrote about them. And so he's actually the second person that was in this project, which has now been more than 1,000 names. So here's the story about Owen Sutton. So Owen Sutton was born on December 8, 1916 in LaGrange, North Carolina. His parents, George and Rachel, were also both born in North Carolina. His father worked as a farmer and later owned a gasoline station. Owen had 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. By 1940, Owen had completed 7 years of schooling. He was still living with his parents and his wife of 5 years, the former Beulah Dare West, and he was working as a farmer. He was drafted in the Army 3 years later on February 3, 1943, and he eventually reached the rank of a Tech 5 in the 42nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, 2nd Mechanized Cavalry Group. So the 2nd MCG, that's how we'll refer to the Mechanized Cavalry Group going forward, was converted from the 2nd Cavalry Regiment, which was still equipped with horses in 1942. The mech version traded the horses for M8 armored cars, jeeps, self-propelled howitzers, and light tanks. It was mainly used to patrol behind American lines to round up German stragglers and to protect supply lines, but it also filled in where needed in defensive capacity, especially protecting the flanks of less mobile units. Sometimes it did conduct reconnaissance behind enemy lines, but that was somewhat rare. So the 2nd MCG arrived in Normandy in July of 1944, and it was attached to Patton's 3rd Army. It participated in the race across France. It breached the Siegfried Line, and it was fighting and it fought in the Battle of the Bulge. During February through April of 1945, the 2nd MCG advanced through Germany, and by April 28th, it was in Czechoslovakia, where that unit freed more than 300 Allied POWs in Hostin, Czechoslovakia. Sergeant Sutton and the rest of the GIs learned that the town was the home of 670 horses, which included the famous Lippizaner stallions. German SS units counterattacked the next day, and Sergeant Sutton was wounded. He died on May 1st, 1945. A few days after this, the 2nd MCG rescued the famous Lippizaner stallions on the orders of General Patton to keep them from falling into the hands of the Russians. It was made into the subject of a Disney movie, Miracle of the White Stallions. His grave is at Westview Cemetery in Kinston, North Carolina. His widow remarried and died in 1998. So this is just one of the stories that we hope to collect in the project that we're doing, Stories Behind the Stars. And when I first started researching Owen Sutton's story, I had no idea where it was going to take me. And that's one of the fascinating things about participating in this project is it's super easy to find the information, super interesting sometimes, and I hope you see the value of having volunteers spend usually less than an hour per story to research these. They're saved here on Fold 3, and eventually we do hope to get all 400,000 plus of our U.S. World War II fallen have stories written about them. And we also, at that point, will have a smartphone app, so anyone visiting a war memorial or cemetery could use the app to scan this individual's name on the war memorial or the cemetery and be able to read their story. So we think that'd be a wonderful thing, but it's going to take quite a few people to volunteer for this project. So please consider, look up information on storiesbehindthestars.org, and you can learn how you could write a story such as this. Thank you for your participation and listening to this.